My name is Jay Frost, and as you may know, if you've been to this party before, I'm the host of the Philanthropy Mastermind series brought to you by DonorSearch. We don't usually talk much about DonorSearch here. We may have a greater opportunity today because of the panel that's sitting here, a group of friends who are leaders in the field of fundraising and philanthropy. The reason we don't typically do it, frankly, is because since 2016, DonorSearch has simply provided a platform where we can have a sandbox for discussions with you about the issues that are really important to us in this field. It's very rare that we get a chance to do it with people who have been really making and shaping philanthropy in all these really positive ways over the years. And we're doing that today at this exceptional place that we're not allowing you to see. So I can look out the window and see water and palm trees, and unfortunately you can't. But we are here at this beautiful resort in Florida for the Accordant Leadership Retreat with three exceptional people here in the center of the table. Betsy is, of course, the CEO of Accordant, and we'll talk to each of them about their work. Bill TeDesco, of course, the CEO of DonorSearch, which lets us put on this series, and Nathan Chappell, who you may know in a variety of ways, but also is the Senior Vice President at DonorSearchAi and the author of course, The Generosity Crisis, which you may have on your bookshelf, and if you don't, shame on you. So with that, maybe we'll just jump right in. The subject of today, I think, has one of our longest titles, but that's because there's a lot of ground to cover. And that's Unlocking the Power of Grateful Patient Fundraising, AI, Innovations, and Proven Strategies for Healthcare Impact. And we're doing that right here at the Accordant Leadership Retreat. So Betsy, do you mind telling us a bit about, first of all, the retreat, why we're here, as well as maybe a little bit about Accordant for those who don't know your work?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Jay. Accordant is a health philanthropy consulting firm. We work with hospitals and a lot of other health-affiliated organizations to advance vibrant philanthropy. And we get together about this time every year with a small group of people for an executive summit to really talk about the trends and issues, what's going on in the field, how we need to rethink our work, how we need to lean into our work in a different way. And so it's just a time for us to come together and recalibrate, re-energize, to go back out and do the good work we have to do.
And why here?
Well, on one hand, I will say, the lazy answer is because it's close to where I live. And who wouldn't want to come to Florida in February?
Right. And this is, and I never remember how to pronounce the name of this resort. That's my fault.
It's the Ponte Vedra Inn and Club.
Thank you, Ponte Vedra,
yes.
Which is a gorgeous place for reflection as much as anything else. And this is an important time to reflect on this field. And I know we're going to jump into that. Before we do, Bill, would you mind saying something about DonorSearch for those who don't know anything about the company?
Sure. DonorSearch is a company that's dedicated to providing prospect research, prospect management, as well as AI solution-based tools to exclusively the nonprofit market. We've been in business for 15 years. We have about 70 employees. And about 10,000 clients.
And a big chunk of them I know are in healthcare, which is one of the reasons that we're all here.
Absolutely. This conference, thank you for inviting us. I really appreciate it. It's exhausting because there's so much good information that's coming from the speakers, and at the same time, we've actually had an opportunity to. We invited a client down, Dan Latz from Minnesota Children's, and he's had an opportunity to kind of share with folks some of the successes that he's had. So, it's an excellent place, and it's 75 degrees out and no humidity. It's gorgeous.
And this is our way of torturing you, but we please don't let that be reflected in the reviews of this session. This is really just to encourage you to come to gatherings like this one because they're very special, and you're covering a lot of territory, and a big chunk of that is about being very thoughtful about the information that is embedded in the personalities of people who love the work we do and support the missions of our organizations. And that's kind of the cornerstone of your work. So do you mind kind of introducing where you are? What is DonorSearchAi? Maybe that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I mean, well, gosh, where do I start actually is the question. So after spending just in the nonprofit field leading fundraising teams for, almost 20 years, my work in AI really came as a means to an end. because essentially as I was leading teams, we were continuing to find ourselves needing to raise more money every year. So our goals always increase from a shrinking pool of donors. And so really about 2017, with just a need to like figure out a new approach, started working and learning about artificial intelligence. And so DonorSearchAi is many evolutions forward from that moment, where we have really best in class, best practices around using AI to essentially measure connection of individuals that would support a hospital. And it's near, healthcare philanthropy is near and dear to my heart. It's where I spent a lot of my professional career in the health sciences and in just in medicine in general. And so, and there's a lot of a lot of nuances in fundraising in healthcare that are learned over time. And so, being able to apply AI in a very informed and responsible way is something that our team at DonorSearchAi takes a lot of pride in. So we're not just, outsiders that think we know best for this industry, but we're actually grown up in this industry, are very protective of it, and essentially have pioneered new ways to essentially measure connection. And then working with partners like Betsy and her team can help take those data insights to the next level through best practices and things like that.
This term best practices is one that keeps coming back. Reminds me of a lot of words that we don't really well define.
Yeah.
And then, and that's not a criticism because I use it all the time. And I wonder if maybe that's because we're not really agreed on what is best, but also because it's evolutionary. I mean, we didn't have the set of tools, the set of information, or even maybe all the ways of thinking about these things that we do today before. When we were talking before we got started, you were talking a little bit about this in terms of the term, another term we use a lot about authenticity, about having these authentic relationships with donors.
Yes.
Would you mind talking about that a bit and why that's important, but also what does that really mean?
Sure.
How is that reflected in your work?
Absolutely. I think donors step forward to do work that is aligned with their own values, their own beliefs, their own purpose, their desire to affect change in the world. And so in our role as philanthropy leaders, we really act as conduits or catalysts to enable them to do the good that they have in mind. And so I think you've got to approach that in a very thoughtful and authentic way, that it's about finding that commonality of vision where we can stand shoulder to shoulder, looking out in the same direction, not necessarily pulling you to do what I want to do or me being pulled to do what you want to do, but to find that common ground where we go forward in a very mutually beneficial and respectful way to affect good change for the greater good.
So the converse of that, have we fallen into that habit? I mean, we've been selling instead of, have we been using sticks instead of carrots? I don't know what the analogy is. How have we been drawing people in or not?
I think we have sometimes gone about this in the wrong way. Nathan and I were even talking about this morning, that we have an opportunity to really approach this as relationship-based fund development. However, we've seen a lot of this work is very transactional. Some of it is manipulative. Some of it is using even gratitude as a lever to get to someone instead of recognizing the virtue that exists in gratitude. And so I think we've got to be very clear about our objective to kind of find this way forward together instead of using tools or processes or best practices or data or anything else to take someone somewhere they don't want to go.
How did we get to this point? Just talking about the problem first before we get to the solutions. How do we get to a point where people are using gratitude as kind of lever to get things that they want instead of as a way to kind of open an opportunity for a relationship?
It's almost an act of desperation. So much of fundraising is art, and then when somebody comes in that doesn't understand the art, then they kind of shift over here to the levers that essentially is what you're describing. And there's an opportunity now. We can understand much more about who's interested, why they're interested, their connection, their partnership with the nonprofit, and there's an opportunity to kind of change the flow here. Right? Nathan was talking about it earlier. there's a possibility that, and I don't think there's any empirical evidence, but maybe there is, but that the shrinking pool of donors, hypothetically, it could be a function of that. It could be a function of people just saying, that's enough. Let's go do something else with disposable income or gratitude. I mean, you even see, to some degree, you have the for-profit platforms that, the GoFundMes and the like. There's a reason they're so popular, and nonprofits have a declining number of donors. Now, I don't know what the reason is, but you can hypothesize.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to hear if you have thoughts on that. And this isn't to knock if you've done something like that, essentially a crowdfunding experiment, or as a part of your, your tool set. But where does that fit in this conversation? Because it is huge.
I mean, again, just my perspective on this, and not to shamelessly pitch the generosity crisis, but we did a lot of studying when we were preparing to writing the book. And sites like GoFundMe process 1 transaction per second, 24/7. And a lot of those transactions, a vast majority, 60% or more, are not going through nonprofits. They're going direct to the impact of an individual. So I think there's a change in that, this idea that I want to be generous. I innately believe that generosity is pro-social behavior, that we're built to be generous, but I want to see the impact. And I think, and I reflect on my career all too often, and I'm absolutely to blame as much as a lot of organizations I've seen of not truly stewarding, steward a moment of gratitude, but not the partnership that we portray that we wanted to bring a donor into. And so we, in essence, made it very transactional and made giving very transactional. And I see that a lot. And so if you are a person that wants to be generous, that wants to make a difference, you might go into GoFundMe to know if I give it to this person, they'll receive it not in 10 days or whatever, they're going to receive it in 10 seconds. And I know that the money that they received made a difference. And I do think there's a change that this idea of gratitude is changing in the sense that people want to feel, as people trust the outside world or less, people will come in closer. And when they come in closer, they want philanthropy to feel local. And I was talking with an organization last week where the phrase, the future of philanthropy is local, and it really hit home, because that's immediately when we feel like we're counted on to help make a difference, and that my contributions make a difference. And I think organizations have found that very hard to do. That to make, especially for large organizations, how does a large organization make philanthropy feel personal? How do they make it feel local? And so bringing it down to I'm important, I'm a partner of this organization. And so there's a lot of work to do. And I think these 2 days together are really, honestly, having honest conversations about things that are not going right or well, and coming up with ideas of things that could, kind of change that paradigm.
Just put a pin in it for 1 second to say that if you are listening live, and we would love to hear from you. So I see that there are a couple of questions in the Q&A already. I haven't looked at those yet. I am going to bring those in. Also, if you have anything you'd just like to say and chat with one another, please do use the chat for that. We really do want you to participate. And especially because this is an important conversation for all of us. You may be in healthcare, you may not, but it's still going to relate to you. And when it comes to philanthropy specifically, it's happening in your community as well. It's affecting the level of care that you get at your community health center, whatever that is. And so this conversation is directly related not only to us professionally, but to us personally and our families. So as you were touching on all this, one thing that strikes me is that there seems to be a disconnect as our institutions, even that word, as organizations mature, they develop maybe processes which in theory should make them more efficient, more effective. They get the technology, they get the staff, they do all these things that we might see as good for growing an organization. But it doesn't always feel very local. So when you've had the conversation over the last day, and when you have it tomorrow, I'm curious how you bring that to a small organization. Let's say it's a community hospital or community health center, a small, that kind of level of service provision. How do you help them to make sure that they stay close to the people that they're serving in the community where they serve, so that these requests are authentic, that these enhancements they make aren't removed from the level of care, the level of connection you have?
I think Nathan's hit it in some part, that just going to the simple word trust. Really effective fund development is not necessarily about having a big organization or a big budget. It is about, again, building those trusting relationships, even with others. And one of the things that we see in the data coming out of give.org is that they say 80% of donors who've given $5,000 or more say it is essential for them to trust the charitable organization that they're participating with. And yet only 22% say they actually trust the organization they're participating with. And so to me, I think we've got to almost harken back to the fundamentals of basic relationship management, establishing credibility, demonstrating follow through, being good stewards of resources, articulating what our intentions are and what the impact would be, to just go back to the basics rather than depending on something that's going to be like whiz bang. There are a lot of simple things we can do that set us on the right course.
As you're saying this, it also strikes me that all of you aren't just doing this work today, but you've all done it throughout your careers. So, Bill, I know that even earlier in your career, before DonorSearch Days, Wealth Engine, all of that, you spent time working in and within healthcare arm of the university system.
Yeah.
So, do you mind taking us back a little bit to what it was like building those relationships then? Maybe even informed by whatever kind of data or tools you had back then, which are not like today's, and then the difference you see between that then and now, and how we can make sure that we're doing what I'm sure you were doing.
So I'll blend two experiences together: the School of Medicine and then the Fund for Educational Excellence. And it really comes down to is you were, aside from the first job I had in fundraising, they gave me kind of the guidelines and how things should be done, but they didn't have any technical background. And you're working largely in the dark, devoid of information. I mean, you maybe pick out 2 or 3 variables, and those fields or that information that you knew about the donor was how you made decisions about whether or not you're going to spend money to approach the individuals. It would be an overstatement to say that I had the same experience at the University of Maryland. I'm sure it's much better now. I certainly wouldn't be there if it wasn't better. But we were totally devoid of information about the constituency. I mean, it was remarkable to me, and I could have done a better job of adjusting to that, but I didn't, and it just wasn't. It's just hard.
And maybe if I could jump in too, because if I think about
No, let me say.
Oh,
more.
sorry.
No, I do appreciate you jumping in. There's some memory there, Jay. I mean,
Sorry, I hit a nerve, Bill.
yeah.
I think it's a really important opportunity to reflect in how, going back to the operative word trust, if in void of that information and insights into an individual, philanthropy was almost entirely based on trust. It always had been for forever. Just, do I know you? Are you reputable? Are you going to do what you say you're going to do? But in that time, I think we've seen the pendulum swing so far to transactional. And Jay, you were asking about the transactional aspect, that I think, and I believe in my heart of hearts, that the pendulum will start to swing back. So we have the insights and we have the data, but now how are we using those in a way that represents trust, that really is going to reinforce trust? And so I do think the pendulum swung so far and it's starting to come back. And I think that is going to feel awkward for some people, like that for individuals that have grown up in the more transactional type of philanthropy, of like being very vulnerable and realizing that, EQ wins all, like really, from a gift officer perspective. So being armed with data, but being extremely, bright in your ability to actually connect with someone. And so it's a new world where you have to balance both. The science, I think, is kind of an equally important plateau to the art now. Whereas science, through most of my career, was way down here. They got to the point where it's like everyone was just trying to find out how to get more revenue. But now it's like, how do we operate in this world where we're informed by data, but still extremely personal?
So how are we going to do that? Well, I mean, really, how are we going to do that? Because are some of these tools really about listening better? And if so, are we doing a better job of listening?
You have to accept that it won't work every time. Not everybody is going to be able to make the transition. Once you accept that, then you say, okay, what kind of a transition do folks need to make? And I think that's where a lot of the hope is, certainly from my perspective, that the technology can aid in that. Because, you're just like a business, a nonprofit, the most expensive costs are the labor costs. But you have faith in humankind, and if you can help folks, you can guide them towards the better decisions to make. I think you have a chance of getting this extra level of productivity. And when I say productivity, I'm talking about having the time to engage people, to frankly earn their trust. But absent that, there's a trajectory here where if you continue this way, the donor pool continues to get smaller, and it would seem to accelerate the disappearance of philanthropy.
Mm-hmm. And I think with that, I totally agree. I think with that, the level setting aspect of this, can we do it? I actually had a presentation last week and someone said, well, it sounds like good old fashioned major gift work. And it is, but it is at scale. Like you can't, good old fashioned gift work means that you have to hire infinite number of gift officers that can meet with infinite number of people. So that's not practical for any organization. So how do you take that type of work and essentially replace some of that, the insights that I would get if I met with a donor, like looking around their business or their house or realizing some of their preferences and things they do. How do you do that at scale? And so that's what data can do. It can take some of that good old fashioned major gift work, allow you to do it more efficiently. And I think the other part, for me at least, is our industry is, for some reason, I'm not sure about, adopted this idea that more is better. That more donors are always better. And I have lots of robust conversations with individuals about this idea that more donors are better. And the reality, when we look at the math, it actually is not true, right? So donors that you acquire that give one time actually often cost you money, but donors that stay with you, that are truly in it to win it with you and in that kind of partnership, have a 15 times lifetime value. So that framing is very difficult. I mean, that is flipping the pyramid to what our industry is really positioned as. More is better. Build the biggest pipeline you can so that you can foster all those relationships. It's expensive. It's also not practical. So get better at essentially a less is more strategy. The ROI will be higher. Your burnout will decrease. So there's a lot of benefits to that, but it's a pretty big paradigm shift from what our industry has been, thinking about for the last, or kind of the way they've been operating for the last couple of years. I think robots and AI can't replace authenticity and transparency and EQ. I think they can guide you to start a conversation in a way that it kind of like kickstarts or allows you to, like, a shortcut to, like, hey, we are aligned in values because the data shows us we're aligned. But at the end of the day, like, we're a highly relational business, and trust is not built between humans and robots. Trust is built between humans and humans. And so, at least for me personally, like, that's a part of this industry that's so unique and special, that while we could have, better swings at bat that are going to be, that are going to get us a bit further, faster, it really comes down to people connecting with people and, having a vision for something that can be achieved by both coming together, that in true partnership, that together you could accomplish something that neither could do on their own. And I don't know, that's, I guess for us, like those transformative moments for me are like, wow, I really matter. I made a difference and this organization relies on me. When you have that sense of responsibility to an organization, you're going to stay with them, right? So because you feel it, you feel like you're part of it, that their success is built in part by your partnership versus the transaction.
So I'm trying to think of how it is that when you are wrapping up this meeting, the retreat, what kind of message you hope to send people off with when it comes to this integration of a message, which is you got to get to know people where they are, really get to know them as who they are and engage them. And you've got to use these tools to ensure that we're able to do that in a more productive and efficient fashion.
I think we advocate that it's very doable. It's just around the corner. And it's affordable. And, in some cases, we don't even charge for it, just to kind of get folks acclimated to it. But I wouldn't take it for granted. One of the efforts that we're pursuing is to try to do it at scale, which would be literally across an entire CRM. And the upside potential there is you could positively impact the fundraising choices that thousands of nonprofits make. But just something that, as an example, and we'll go unnamed at this point, we literally had a discussion. One of the things that we all know is fundraisers know it intuitively that when people engage through activities, that's the beginning of measuring engagement. Literally, we were having a discussion with the CRM, people that publish the software. And when we asked them to give us the activity information, they just kind of looked down and said, no, we're not going to do that. And it's like, but you do understand that this is very predictive and this would be very helpful and everything. But there's no infrastructure. While they did record activity, each of the nonprofits did it differently, just because it wasn't considered a priority. To your point, setting it as accountability. This is not a gimmick at this point. There are still a lot of structural issues that are still built into the process that haven't been overcome. As we were saying today, the time to start is start today. Find out what these impediments are going to be, and give yourself some time to deal with them. But it's not all just sitting there waiting for everybody to pursue. So, but we'll take this one here.
Running into people this morning after we just did the first couple of sessions, people said, wow, I already have like a notebook. I've taken copious notes. I have 25 things that I need to do. And, I think part of what you've got to walk away from, whether you're on a webinar or whether you're at a conference, is that you can't do 25 things well. And so distill it down to the 3 things that you're going to be committed to, that you believe are really going to move the dial, and go do those things exceptionally well, and then figure out what the next things are going to be that you're going to do. Because I think we tend to get overwhelmed and distracted, and we don't have enough resources. And so if we're not very focused and deliberate in what we're doing, we will not get anywhere. So, find a couple things, commit to them, do them well.
Actually, both what Betsy and Bill just said, I would echo. I would say, recognizing that our industry is at a crossroads, which is how we started our session this morning, that if we go down one way, it won't end well for anyone. So with that said, there's a million things that you should do. But, Bill just said it, starting is key. Start where you start, and then, literally just, move things forward. But resting on this idea that this is not, the environment's not changing, or that, things are just going to be okay if we just hunker down. It won't. The industry, the trend line is far too long. It's very pronounced that if we continue doing things the same way, the result for everyone is not great. So starting is key, and then prioritize your effort.
Well, with that, I want to first of all thank those who stuck around during all those interruptions, and there are a bunch of you, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And apologize for losing all your questions along the way. We did want to integrate them, but we had no way of doing it. So maybe what I could do is ask each of our fine panelists also to tell you where you could find out more about them. And if you want to shoot a question their way, either they or one of the people working with them, I'm sure would be happy to get back to you. They all have a lot of insights to offer, and not just here in Florida. So maybe we'll start with Betsy Chapin Taylor. Where can people reach out to you?
Please find me on LinkedIn, Betsy Chapin Taylor on LinkedIn, or Betsy@AccordantHealth.com.
Thank you. Bill?
Bill at DonorSearch.net.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Nathan Chappell, or Nathan.Chappell at DonorSearch.net.
Great. And I want to thank all of you again for hanging out with us during our multi-part session today. Hopefully, the next time we manage to get people like this together, a three-part series, we're going to release these all as 3-minute videos. Yes, with animation from Adult Swim, so watch for that. Hopefully I didn't just violate copyright law or something. This should be a lot of fun, but this is a really important topic, and a lot of it's being covered right here. So my thanks to Accordant for providing a forum like this, not just for this discussion, for all the things going on in the next room, and obviously the DonorSearch for leading discussion as they do every day on this issue of AI and the Philanthropy Mastermind series. So with that, thanks for showing up. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.